The boardroom doors opened, and every head turned toward the sound of small shoes on marble floor. A 6-year-old girl stood in the doorway, clutching a worn, spiral notebook against her chest like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "Where is Elena Cruz?" Richard Hale asked, not yet looking up from his papers. "My mom's sick," the girl said quietly. "So I came instead." Richard's pen stopped moving. He looked up and the color drained from his face. Because he knew that notebook. He knew that handwriting on the cover. And in 15 years, he had never stopped wondering what happened to the woman who once saved his entire company and asked for nothing in return. Before we get into how a sick mother's daughter ended up standing alone in a boardroom full of executives, and why one glance at an old notebook made a billionaire CEO go completely silent if you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandpa's Story Chair. And before we begin, I'd love to know, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from and what city. Grandpa reads every single one, and it means more than you know to see where this story reaches tonight. Now, let's go back 3 days to a small bakery on the corner of a street most people in this city had already forgotten existed. The bakery was called Elena's Corner, though the paint on the sign had faded so badly that most days it just read, Lena's Orn. It sat wedged between a shuttered laundromat and a nail salon, on a block that the city had quietly stopped caring about years ago. Cracked sidewalks, a streetlight that flickered instead of glowed. But inside, at 5 in the morning, the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread turned that forgotten corner into something warm. Elena Cruz had run the bakery for 6 years, ever since the corporate world spat her out during a merger she never saw coming. She used to tell Mia, half joking, half not, "I traded a corner office for a corner oven, baby. Best trade I ever made." Most mornings, that felt true. Mia was 6 now, with 2 missing front teeth and a habit of narrating everything she did like she was hosting her own cooking show. And now, she'd announce, standing on a step stool, "We add the flour, very carefully," because Mommy said Elena would laugh every time, even on the mornings when laughing took effort. Money was tight. It always had been. The bakery brought in just enough to cover rent above their apartment, groceries, and Mia's school shoes, usually a size too big. So they last longer, Elena would say. But they had a rhythm. Elena baked before sunrise. Mia set out the little paper price tags, printing the numbers herself in careful, crooked handwriting. Customers, mostly regulars, mostly older folks from the neighborhood, would come in for coffee and leftover bread at the end of the day. Half price, because Elena couldn't stand the thought of throwing food away when someone nearby was hungry. "You give away too much," her neighbor Mr. Alvarez used to tease. "I give away just enough," Elena would answer. There was one thing Elena kept from her old life, a spiral notebook, its cover soft and curled from years of handling. She never explained exactly what was in it. Mia used to think it was just an old recipe book, because sometimes at night, after closing, Elena would sit at the kitchen table and write in it slowly, like each word cost something. "What's that for, Mommy?" "Just remembering things, baby. Some things you don't want to forget, even if they hurt a little." Mia never pushed. 6-year-olds have a way of accepting mysteries without needing them solved. 3 weeks ago, a letter arrived from the city. Elena read it twice at the kitchen table, her face going still in a way Mia had never seen before. The bakery's lease was under review. "A zoning technicality," the letter said. A fine more money than Elena had ever held in her hands at once, due within 30 days, or the shop would close for good. Elena didn't cry in front of Mia. She never did. But that night, Mia heard her on the phone, voice low and shaking, trying to explain to someone at the city office that this was her whole life. Please, just give her time. An appeals meeting was scheduled, one chance to explain herself in person to a company that had somehow ended up buying the block Hale Enterprises. Elena had circled the date on the calendar 3 times, and then, the morning of the meeting, Elena woke up burning with fever, barely able to stand. "I have to go," she whispered, trying to sit up and immediately lying back down. "Mia, I have to." "I'll go," Mia said. Elena almost laughed if she'd had the strength. "Baby, it's a business meeting. Grown-ups only. But Mia was already pulling her shoes on the ones a size too big and reaching for the notebook on the kitchen table, the one Elena always kept close. "You said some things you don't want to forget," Mia said. "So I won't, or forget either. I'll tell them you're sorry you're sick. I'll tell them everything." Elena, too weak to argue, could only whisper the address and watch her daughter walk out the door alone. The bus ride took 40 minutes. Mia sat with her knees pressed together and the notebook hugged tight against her chest, watching the city change outside the window, smaller buildings turning into taller ones, cracked sidewalks turning into polished stone. By the time she reached the glass tower with Hale Enterprises etched across the entrance in silver letters, her legs had started to shake, though she wasn't sure if it was nerves or just being tired. The lobby was enormous. Marble floors so shiny she could see her own reflection, walking a size too big pair of shoes across a floor that probably cost more than her mother's entire bakery. A security guard crouched down to her level. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" "I have a meeting," Mia said, straightening her back the way she'd seen her mother do when she was trying to look braver than she felt. "For Elena's corner. My mom's sick, so I came instead." The guard exchanged a glance with the woman at the front desk. Neither of them quite knew what to do with the 6-year-old insisting she had a business meeting. But upstairs, on the 40th floor, Richard Hale was already seated at the head of a long glass table, flanked by 3 board members and a stack of files, an inch-thick files that, in cold legal language, recommended the immediate termination of a small bakery's lease due to non-compliance and repeated late filings. Richard hadn't looked at those files closely. He rarely did anymore. Hale Enterprises had grown so large that decisions like this one were supposed to be routine, a signature, a formality, a business closed among hundreds of small businesses the company touched every year. He hadn't always been like this. 15 years ago, Richard Hale was 31 years old and drowning. A catastrophic accounting error buried 3 layers deep in a batch of files no one had caught was about to surface in an audit and take the entire company down with it. He remembered pacing his office at midnight, certain he was about to lose everything he'd built. His assistant at the time, a quiet, sharp-eyed young woman named Elena Cruz, had stayed late without being asked. She found the error before the auditors did. She spent 3 sleepless nights fixing it, asking for nothing, telling no one, because as she told him once simply, "You looked like you needed someone in your corner. So I stayed in it." He'd promised her, that year, that he would never forget it. Then, the merger came. Restructuring. A wave of layoffs that swept through departments faster than any one person could track. And somewhere in the chaos, Elena Cruz's name was on a list Richard never personally reviewed. By the time he noticed she was gone, she had already cleared out her desk and left no forwarding information. He told himself he'd find her eventually, thank her properly. 15 years passed instead. Now, sitting at the head of this table, staring at a stack of papers labeled Elena's Corner Lease Termination Recommendation, some small buried part of his mind flickered a name, half familiar, easy to miss in a stack of dozens of similar files. He hadn't connected it yet. Not until the doors opened. A 6-year-old girl stood there, alone, in shoes too big for her feet, holding a notebook against her chest like armor. "Where is Elena Cruz?" Richard asked, more out of routine than real attention, still looking down at his papers. "My mom's sick," the girl said, her voice small but steady. "So I came instead." Richard's pen stopped. Something about the phrase "my mom's sick, so I came instead" pulled at a memory he couldn't place yet. He looked up, and then he saw the notebook in her hands. The cover was soft, curled at the edges from years of handling. A small, familiar water stain in the corner. He would have recognized that notebook anywhere, because he was the one who had given it to her a gift, years ago, on the night she stayed late to save his company, when he didn't know how else to say thank you. "That notebook," he said slowly, standing up from his chair for the first time. "Where did you get that?" "It's my mom's," Mia said, holding it tighter, unsure if she'd done something wrong. "She said some things you don't want to forget, even if they hurt a little. She writes in it at night. I brought it because I didn't want to forget to tell you she's sorry. She's really, really Sorry. She's sick. The boardroom had gone completely silent. 3 board members who had, minutes earlier, been ready to approve the termination of a bakery lease without a second thought, now sat frozen, watching their CEO's face go pale. "What's your mother's name?" Richard asked, though he already knew. The boardroom had gone completely silent. 3 board members who had, minutes earlier, been ready to approve the termination of a bakery lease without a second thought, now sat frozen, watching their CEO's face go pale. "What's your mother's name?" Richard asked, though he already knew. "Elena," Mia said. "Elena Cruz. She has a bakery. Elena's Corner. But the city sent a letter, and Mommy cried, and I don't really understand it. But she said if we don't come today, we might lose everything." Richard sat back down slowly, staring at the file in front of him, the same file he had been about to sign without reading, and for the first time in 15 years, he opened it properly and read every word. "Cancel my next 3 meetings," Richard said quietly, without looking up. His assistant, standing near the door, blinked. "Sir, the Hendricks call is in 20 minutes. Cancel it." He rose from his chair and walked around the long glass table until he was standing in front of Mia, then crouched down so they were eye to eye, the same way he remembered another young woman once crouching beside his desk 15 years ago, telling him it would all be okay. "Can I see the notebook?" he asked gently. "Just for a second. I promise I'll give it right back." Mia hesitated, glancing at the 3 board members watching her, then decided the man with the kind, shaking hands seemed safe. She handed it over. Richard opened it slowly, page after page. In handwriting he hadn't seen in 15 years, Elena's careful, sloping script, notes to herself, recipes, and then, further in, entries that weren't about baking at all. Day 340 without the bakery closing. Mia asked if we're poor. I told her we're rich in the ways that matter. I don't know if she believed me. I don't fully believe it either some nights. Richard Hale probably doesn't remember me. That's all right. I didn't do it to be remembered. But some nights I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. Richard's throat tightened. He closed the notebook gently and looked at one of the board members. "Pull the file," he said. "The Elena's Corner file. Now." A younger board member, a man named Preston, who had personally drafted the termination recommendation, cleared his throat. "Sir, respectfully, the zoning violation is legitimate. Multiple late filings and—" "Read me the fine amount," Richard said. Preston glanced at the paper. $11,400. Due within— "Do you know how this company survived 15 years ago?" Richard's voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire room. "There was an accounting error, a bad one. If it had gone public in an audit, this company, this building, everyone's job in it would have collapsed. Do you know who caught it? Who spent 3 sleepless nights fixing it and never told a soul? Never asked for a bonus, never asked for anything." Nobody answered. "Her name is on that file you were about to make me sign," Richard said. "Elena Cruz." The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning and Mia, standing very still, watching the grown-ups with wide, uncertain eyes, still not entirely sure what was happening, only that the man with the notebook seemed to be fighting some kind of feeling he didn't want to show in front of her. "I'm not signing this," Richard said, sliding the file away from him. "I'm not signing anything that closes that bakery. Draft new terms. The fine is waived. The lease is extended. No, the lease is permanent, as long as she wants it. And I want a formal letter of apology sent to Elena Cruz for the fact that it took her 6-year-old daughter walking into this building for anyone here to actually read her file." Preston opened his mouth, then closed it again. Richard turned back to Mia and handed the notebook back to her with both hands, carefully, the way you'd return something sacred. "Your mom," he said, "did something for me a long time ago that I never got to properly thank her for. I think I owe her that thank you now. Would that be okay if I came to see her, to make sure she's okay?" Mia studied him for a long moment, the way children do when they're deciding whether an adult can be trusted. "She's really sick," Mia said finally, "but I think she'd like that. She always says thank you shouldn't wait." Richard almost laughed, a small, broken sound, somewhere between relief and 15 years of guilt finally loosening its grip on his chest. "She's right," he said. "They shouldn't." He looked at his assistant. "Get my car. And call ahead to Rosalind's pharmacy, whatever Elena needs for that fever. Have it ready. We're leaving in 5 minutes." Elena was asleep on the couch when she heard small feet on the stairs, followed by footsteps that weren't Mia's. She sat up too fast, head spinning from the fever, and found herself face to face with a man she hadn't seen in 15 years, standing awkwardly in her small living room with a paper bag of medicine in one hand and her daughter holding the other. "Richard?" Her voice cracked, half disbelief, half exhaustion. "I should have found you years ago," he said simply. "I'm sorry it took this long." There was no grand speech, no dramatic reveal of wealth, no cameras, no announcement. Just a man sitting down carefully on the edge of a worn armchair across from a woman with a fever, while a 6-year-old girl climbed onto her mother's lap and whispered,
"I told him everything."
"Mommy, just like you said." Elena laughed weakly, pressing a kiss to the top of Mia's head. "I bet you did, baby." Over the following weeks, there was no sudden fortune, no headline, nothing that would have made for a flashy ending. Richard visited twice more, once to personally deliver the signed lease extension, and once just to buy bread, standing in line like everyone else, insisting on paying full price, even when Elena tried to wave him off. "You don't owe me anything," Elena told him. "I know," Richard said. "I'm not paying a debt. I'm buying bread from the best baker I know." The zoning fine was quietly resolved. The faded sign outside got a fresh coat of paint. Elena's Corner, in full now, no letters missing. And on slow afternoons, Mia still stood on her step stool, narrating the process of adding flour, very carefully, because Mommy said, while regulars came in for coffee and day-old bread sold at half price, because some habits are worth keeping even when the money worries finally start to ease. Elena never framed the notebook or put it in a drawer. She kept writing in it some nights, though the entries changed. Day 12 since the lease was saved. Mia asked if we're rich now. I told her we always were. She rolled her eyes at me. She's getting too smart for these answers. But I meant it. We have this shop. We have each other. And once, when it mattered most, a stranger became a friend again, simply because a little girl wasn't afraid to walk through a door alone. Grandpa always says, the biggest moments in life rarely announce themselves with fireworks. Sometimes they walk in wearing shoes a size too big, carrying a notebook they don't fully understand, simply because someone they love needed them to be brave for one afternoon. Kindness given freely, the kind Elena once offered without expecting anything back, has a way of finding its way home again, even 15 years later, even through the unlikeliest messenger. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. And before you go, comment below. Kindness still exists if you believe even one good act can change someone's life. Thank you for sitting with Grandpa a little while longer tonight. Until the next story, take care of each other.